everyone, welcome back to Literazzi, where we read the first chapters of the world's most famous novels. I'm Taylor, and today we're going to be reading chapters 1 and 2 of Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. And if you would like to purchase your own copy of this amazing novel with these beautiful gold sprayed edges, we do have a link in the description below. It really helps to support the channel and just ensure that we can continue to bring you these amazing stories. So without further ado, let's jump into Anna Karenina. Chapter 1. Happy families are all alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. Everything was in confusion in the Oblonsky's house. The wife had discovered that the husband was carrying on an intrigue with a French girl who had been a governess in their family, and she had announced to her husband that she could not go on living in the same house with him. This position of affairs had now lasted 3 days, and not only the husband and wife themselves, but all members of their family and household were painfully conscious of it. Every person in the house felt that there was no sense in their living together, and that the stray people brought together by chance in any inn had more in common with one another than they, the members of the family and household of the Oblonskys. The wife did not leave her own room, the husband had not been at home for 3 days, the children ran wild all over the house. The English governess quarreled with the housekeeper and wrote to a friend asking her to look out for a new situation for her. The man cook had walked off the day before just at dinner time. The kitchen maid and the coachman had given warning. 3 days after the quarrel, Prince Stepan Arkadyevich Oblonsky, as he was called in the fashionable world, woke up at his usual hour, that is, at 8 o'clock in the morning, not in his wife's bedroom, but on the leather-covered sofa in his study. He turned over his stout, well-cared-for person on the springy sofa, as though he would sink into a long sleep again. He vigorously embraced the pillow on the other side and buried his face in it, but all at once he jumped up, sat on the sofa, and opened his eyes. Yes, how was it now, he thought, going over his dream. Now, was it? To be sure. Alabin was giving a dinner at Darmstadt. No, not Darmstadt, but something American. Yes, but then Darmstadt was in America. Yes, Alabin was giving a dinner on glass tables, and the tables sang El mio tesoro. Not El mio tesoro, though, but something better. And there was some sort of little decanters on the table, and there were women, too, he remembered. Stepan Arkadyevich's eyes twinkled gaily as he pondered with a smile. Yes, it was nice, very nice. There was a great deal more that was delightful, only there's no putting it into words or even expressing it in one's thoughts awake. And noticing a gleam of light peeping in beside one of the serge curtains, he cheerfully dropped his feet over the edge of the sofa and felt about with them for his slippers, a present on his last birthday, worked for him by his wife on gold-colored morocco. And, as he had done every day for the last 9 years, he stretched out his hand without getting up toward the place where his dressing gown had always hung in his bedroom, and thereupon he suddenly remembered that he was not sleeping in his wife's room, but in his study, and why the smile vanished from his face, he knitted his brows. Ah, he muttered, recalling everything that had happened. And again, every detail of his quarrel with his wife was present to his imagination, all the hopelessness of his position, and worst of all, his own fault. Yes, she won't forgive me, and she can't forgive me. And the most awful thing about it is that it's all my fault, though I'm not to blame. That's the point of this whole situation, he reflected. Oh, he kept repeating in despair as he remembered the acutely painful sensations caused him by this quarrel. Most unpleasant of all was the first minute when, on coming, happy and good-humored from the theater, with a huge pear in his hand for his wife, he had not found his wife in the drawing-room, to his surprise, had not found her in the study either, and saw her at last in her bedroom with the unlikely letter that revealed everything in her hand. She, his Dolly, forever fussing and worrying over household details and limited in her ideas as he considered, was sitting perfectly still with the letter in her hand, looking at him with an expression of horror, despair, and indignation. "What's this?" she asked, pointing to the letter. And at this recollection, Stepan Arkadyevich, as it's so often the case, was not so much annoyed at the fact itself as at the way in which he had met his wife's words. There happened to him at that instant what does happen to people when they are unexpectedly caught in something very disgraceful. He did not succeed in adapting his face to the position in which he was placed toward by his wife by the discovery of his fault. Instead of being hurt, denying, defending himself, begging forgiveness, instead of remaining indifferent even, anything would have been better than what he did do. His face utterly involuntarily assumed its habitual, good-humored, and therefore idiotic smile. This idiotic smile he could not forgive himself. Catching sight of that smile, Dolly shuddered as though a physical pain broke out with her characteristic heat into a flood of cruel words and rushed out of the room. Since then, she had refused to see her husband. It's that idiotic smile that's to blame for it all, thought Stepan Arkadyevitch. But what's to be done? What's to be done? He said to himself in despair, and found no answer. Chapter 2. Stepan Arkadyevitch was a truthful man in his relations with himself. He was incapable of deceiving himself and persuading himself that he repented of his conduct. He could not at this date repent of the fact that he, a handsome, susceptible man of 34, was not in love with his wife, the mother of 5 living and 2 dead children, and only a year younger than himself. All he repented of was that he had not succeeded better in hiding it from his wife. But he felt all the difficulty of his position and was sorry for his wife, his children, and himself. Possibly he might have managed to conceal his sins better from his wife if he had anticipated that the knowledge of them would have had such an effect on her. He had never clearly thought out the subject, but he had vaguely conceived that his wife must long ago have suspected him of being unfaithful to her, and shut her eyes to the fact. He had even supposed that she, a worn-out woman no longer young or good-looking, and in no way remarkable or interesting, merely a good mother, ought from a sense of fairness to take an indulgent view. It had turned out quite the other way. "Oh, it's awful! Oh dear, awful!" Stepan Arkadyevitch kept repeating to himself, and he could think of nothing to be done. And how well things were going up until now, how well we got on. She was contented and happy in her children. I never interfered with her in anything. I let her manage the children and the house just as she'd like. It's true, it's bad, her having been a governess in our house. That's bad. There's something common, vulgar in flirting with one's governess. But what a governess! He vividly recalled the roguish black eyes of Mlle Roland and her smile. But after all, while she was in the house, I kept myself in hand. And the worst of it all is that she's already, it seems as if ill luck would have it so. But what? What's to be done? There was no solution, but that universal solution which life gives to all questions, even the most complex and insoluble. That answer is, one must live in the needs of the day, that is, forget oneself. To forget himself in sleep was impossible now, at least till nighttime. He could not go back now to the music sung by the decanter women, so he must forget himself in the dream of daily life. Then we shall see, Stepan Arkadyevitch said to himself, and getting up he put on a gray dressing gown lined with blue silk, tied the tassels in a knot, and drawing a deep breath of air into his broad, bare chest, he walked to the window with his usual confident step, turning out his feet that carried his full frame so easily. He pulled up the blind and rang the bell loudly. It was at once answered by the appearance of an old friend. His valet, Matvey, carried his clothes, his boots, and a telegram. Matvey was followed by the barber with all the necessaries for shaving. "Are there any papers from the office?" asked Stepan Arkadyevitch, taking the telegram and seating himself at the looking-glass. "On the table," replied Matvey, glancing with inquiring sympathy at his master. And, after a short pause, he added with a sly smile, "They've sent from the carriage-jobbers." Stepan Arkadyevitch made no reply. He merely glanced at Matvey in the looking-glass. In the glance, in which their eyes met in the looking-glass, it was clear that they understood one another. Stepan Arkadyevitch's eyes asked, "Why do you tell me that? Don't you know?" Matvey put his hands in his jacket pockets, thrust out one leg, and gazed silently, good-humoredly, with a faint smile at his master. "I told them to come on Sunday. Until then, not to trouble you or themselves for nothing," he said. He had obviously prepared the sentence beforehand. Stepan Arkadyevitch saw Matvey wanted to make a joke and attract attention to himself. Tearing open the telegram, he read it through, guessing at the words, misspelt as they always are in telegrams, and his face brightened. "Matvey, my sister Anna Karenina will be here tomorrow," he said, checking for a minute the sleek, plump hand of the barber, cutting a pink path through his long, curly whiskers. "Thank God," said Matvey, showing by this response that he, like his master, realized the significance of this arrival. That is, that Anna Karenina, the sister he was so fond of, might bring about a recollection between husband and wife. Alone or with her husband? Inquired Matvey. Stepan Arkadyevich could not answer, as the barber was at work on his upper lip, and he raised one finger. Matvey nodded at the looking-glass. Alone. Is the room to be got ready upstairs? Inform Darya Alexandrovna where she orders. Darya? Matvey repeated, as though in doubt. Yes, inform her. Here, take the telegram, give it to her, and then do what she tells you. You want to try it on, Matvey understood, but he said, yes, sir. Stepan Arkadyevich was already washed and combed and ready to be dressed when Matvey, stepping deliberately in his creaky boots, came into the room with the telegram in his hand. The barber had gone. Darya Alexandrovna told me to inform you that she is going away. Let him do, that is you, do as he likes, he said, laughing only with his eyes and putting his hands in his pockets. He watched his master with his head on one side. Stepan Arkadyevich was silent a minute. Then a good-humored and rather pitiful smile showed itself on his handsome face. Ah, Matvey, he said, shaking his head. It's all right, sir. She will come around, said Matvey. Come round? Yes, sir. Do you think so? Who's there? Asked Stepan Arkadyevich, hearing the rustle of a woman's dress at the door. It's I, said a firm, pleasant woman's voice, and the stern, pockmarked face of Matrona Filmonova, the nurse, was thrust in at the doorway. Well, what is it, Matrona? Queried Stepan Arkadyevich, going up to her at the door. Although Stepan Arkadyevich was completely in the wrong as regards his wife, and was conscious of himself, almost everyone in the house, even the nurse, was on his side. Well, what now? He asked disconsolately. Go to her, sir. Own your fault again. Maybe God will aid you. She is suffering so, it's sad to see her. And besides, everything in the house is topsy-turvy. You must have pity, sir, on the children. Beg her forgiveness, sir. There's no help for it. One must take the consequences, but she won't see me. You do your part. God is merciful. Pray to God, sir. Pray to God. Come, that'll do. You can go, said Stepan Arkadyevich, blushing suddenly. Well now, do dress me, he turned to Matvey, and threw off his dressing gown decisively. Matvey was already holding up the shirt like a horse's collar, and blowing off some invisible speck, he slipped it on with obvious pleasure over the well-groomed body of his master. And that was chapter 1 and 2 of Anna Karenina. Thanks again for joining us on Literazzi. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button below in order to make sure you don't miss out on any of our future reads. And until then, I'll see you at the library.